Podcast, where we sit down with the founders, creators, and leaders shaping the future of business, culture, and performance. Today, I'm joined by someone who understands borders, who understands the worldwide economy, and who really understands business through a global perspective. Today, I'm joined by Yukta Kandhari. Yukta, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Abel, for having me. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you for having me.
So, Yukta, tell us about the story of how you started the Hiveshare.
That's an interesting one. So I've had background in computer science and business systems. However, while studying different things, I figured out that I might be a great strategist, but when it comes to coding, I found it really functional. And that's how I pivoted into building, like doing workshops and sessions and whatnot. And that's where I figured out the sweet spot is actually building communities and connecting people. Is because when you have people connected over a single sense of mission, that's when you can see scale, you can see momentum, and you would like to put in more work into actually scaling things. So that's how the idea of the high sphere was born. We used to do a lot of communities for a lot of people. I still manage world's largest global consulting project. It's called X Culture. So while working with such a diverse audience coming from different parts of the world, the idea was born that, let's actually bring in the founders and growth leaders who either have community as a revenue engine or who want to have community as a part of their business together so we could work together and experiment with different aspects because this is a space where it doesn't get boring. Of course, scheduling and routines would be boring, but solving challenges would always be interesting.
Amazing. Awesome. And, one thing that I think is really great about your business is that it really is about bringing people together, whether that be through a niche community or through on a global stage. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how important building out a community is for a founder or business owner.
I mean, I appreciate the question, and I think you've been on school, you've been experimenting so much on school as well. I mean, before I answer that question, what has your experience been on being on school or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, so far I've loved it. So I've definitely joined communities that didn't really feel like communities. It was just like a job board or some place that, the admins posted to try to sell something, right? I've also been in other communities, the community that you and I are in together, that have really felt like a community. It's a free resource where the admins and the people involved genuinely felt like they were there to help you out. And I found a lot of value in that. I found a lot of value in, speaking with founders, speaking with other people who are going through the same things that I am going through. It's like, oh, I have ADHD. It's really nice to hear the struggles and the way that other people have dealt with their ADHD while founding a business. Obviously, founding a business, starting a business is incredibly difficult. There's a lot of stuff that has to go right for you. And, with someone who has ADHD, it could be very difficult. So finding that community and finding the people that relate in that sphere has helped me immensely.
I can really absolutely connect with the factors because I think there was someone whom I spoke with, and he said that the communities are built two ways. Sometimes misery loves companionship, and it did hurt in the beginning, but I was like, that makes sense. But you need to know that people are suffering from the same things as you do to actually come out of it, and that's how for businesses community became an important part. Is because first it gives you people to connect on the same mission that your company has, and second, if someone loves your product, the word of mouth is very easy. So, for example, you and I are connected, and I know you, and we both know what are the things we do. Now, it's very easy for each one of us to recommend each other in different spaces. So, that chain or word of mouth also becomes pretty easy. So, it's like if you make a bad product, and a lot of people in the marketing space call it if you have a shit product. So, you expand that. If you have a good product and you're iterating on that, to become a great product, then the word goes on like that. I think that's what, even when you look at Alex Hormozy's book launch of 100 million money models, he actually inculcated community and the leaderboard so that so many people were actually recommending his book. And of course, he had a great offer towards the end of it. So I think that's the power of community for a business or even like a book launch I mean, the live example is Alex's greatest book launch. Like he has a Guinness World of Book record for that.
Yeah. And if there's one person you can just always try to emulate in your business, it's Alex Hormozy and his wife actually, both of them amazing. But and you know, building that community is definitely like something that he has really embodied, you know, providing that value, building that brand, and really building that community of, hey, you're an entrepreneur, this is what you need to do. This is how to be successful in your goals. And I mean, he owns school, right? So it really speaks to his mission as well. And
Yeah.
I wanna hear about really specifically what kind of communities that you're planning on building, what you guys really do to help build those communities.
So when I talk about specifically the communities that I've worked on, so we worked on actually building world's largest multidisciplinary community, but this is more for people those are in international business. So it's a community of students, professors, and companies. So let's say a company who wants to have a crowdsourcing solution for their business, like they don't want companies like McKinsey or any consultant to work on the company, but they want like a lot of so crowdsourcing is another way of consulting when you get a lot of people and they solve your case study together. So we work with those companies, and then there's a huge community of student worldwide. Myself helped so many communities with different people from different parts of the world. So we bring them on the same team, and they solve that business case study for that individual company. And of course, if you're a university grad, the professors can grade you based on how real your solution was. That's one part of building that aspect of connecting all these people, and then devising a program and iterating the program so that the process every as I can say, you can say semester, every 6 months or 3 months, it's improved for the new teams or new companies to join in. Then it's different for me personally. I worked in the VR space as well, which was very exciting. So I was in San Francisco working with an SF-based startup, and we wanted to build the largest VR avatar makers community. So if you are into VR, each one of you has an avatar of yourself, and there are avatar creators, and that's very niche. Like in states, I would say you have 5, 6,000, 10,000. The max cap I can put to it is 30 to 40,000 people. Like that's the actual regular cap who keeps on creating these avatars for VR users. So to build that community of those people, those who are just creating assets for VR, that was one interesting challenge to solve on. And I've worked in different areas to explore. And I still love experimenting. So I was in hospitality, wherein we were building a sustainable community. Like think of community culture as an umbrella. We used to do a lot of events to figure out what kind of people would like to come to a restaurant or a cafe bar, and what experiences would they like to have. So we used to put a lot of brains into building these experiences for hospitality spaces. So combining all of this student-led communities, I figured out that the niche that actually is people are talking about, and it's a struggle for a lot of businesses. That's even like look at HubSpot. How HubSpot grew its businesses having elite diamond and different levels of partners, and you sell HubSpot services and make commission on that. So that's an entire community of people now, those who are different tier level partners, and they keep on selling HubSpot. So now HubSpot has a selling system. So I figured out that like you can take examples of these companies and then connect with founders, those who want to actually figure out how their product. I like talk about online products. I have less understanding about physical product, and I'm happy to explore that. But I would like to talk more about the digital space, or how can you digitally incentivize on building a community and have your product be the most talked product for people in your space. So what are the things that we can do? Events, how can we connect more people? So then if of course you have lead systems and like lot of backend logic, but that's like the core of it. So now I love connecting these people on a similar platform through the podcast, through like different platforms, but then bring them on a community so that something worked for me, it might work for you. And I'm happy to see your community grow.
Yeah, so, you know, you talked about being in different spaces. You were in the hospitality space, and then you also were in the VR space, and I'm sure you've done multiple different spaces. What do you think is sort of similar when you are coming up with an idea of building these communities for each different niche that you're in? And what do you think is different when you're trying to find out how to build these communities?
So the difference is the niche that you're working on. For example, if you could explain me something that you've been working on as a founder with your tool, what kind of people do you want to work with, or do you want people to experiment with your tool?
Yeah, so I provide AI solutions for high ticket coaches, courses, the course creators, info products. If you're an online course or consultant, I'm your guy to help you with AI, more so on the optimizing sales space.
So now we treat that as a niche wherein you're working with high ticket coaches, consultants, and business owners with AI solutions. So now identifying the people in that space, I think the most different thing is what kind of understanding do I have about what are the things that you're doing? If I do not know what you are doing exactly, I would not be able to bring the essence of the right set of people. I mean, if someone else who's building a community for you or helping you with that, they really need to understand what you do and connect with you on that. So I think community on the different side is very emotional. No matter how much we think, of course, it's a revenue generating business. But if you do not understand the core of what you are selling or the other person is selling and what kind of people do they exactly want to bring into their ecosystem, it's then you cannot launch it. On the second side, like that's the most difficult and different thing. So that's how you can like have different tiers and things like that. And on a similar side, it's more about so there's a book which you can read. It's called The Cold Network. It talks about different companies like Dropbox, Slack, Uber. How were they able to scale their businesses? It's the cold start problem. The name of the book. So what you do is you start with this. The most common thing is start with the sub networks, and this stays consistent within all the community. And it's a common pattern which I also observe. So let's say 5 to 6 people come together, they're working together. Once they are working together, you see, okay, this became an atomic group in itself and it has become self sustaining. Now, you don't need to constantly give prompts to these people. Like, for example, in school communities or as well, or circle, you would see that there are 10 to 15 people who just love to be in that community. You do not need to give them constant prompts that, hey, what's if you put a post, they will just go and, love your talk or just love you as a person, let's say, if not even what you're building. So if you're able to accomplish that subatomic self-sustaining network, then you start replicating that same within that community. That's what Tinder did. So it started hosting parties, and how that happened is the owner's brother wanted to like have a date and he was not able to have it, and they hosted a party wherein they had a lot of women like fake accounts and a lot of men. It was like it became a party, and that's how they started having these dating parties in universities. And then, like, one university had its own party set with Tinder as a partner. Then they started replicating the same idea or the same process within different universities to have these dating matches, prom nights, and things like that. So I think the similar thing is having that one self-sustaining group within that community, like 10 people, 6 people, whatever. You can have 20, 30, whatever. But I think the smaller the group is, the more tight-knit conversations are there within them. Like the broader you go, it's difficult to like have those interlinked connections. So once you
Yeah.
have that, then you can replicate it. That's like the most common thing. Like if you have 10 ambassadors, those who are gonna be there no matter what, and you had different sets of experiments within that community with them, they make their own community, and then they're responsible for replicating the same concept in different areas. So I think that's very similar. Like if you're able to achieve that, the growth in community space in terms of people, in terms of money, it's exponential. Like you would see a few communities on different online platforms that are that started with 1,000. It took them time to go to hit that first 5,000 or 6,000 or whatever number. Now they're exponentially growing. Like every month you would see 2 to 3,000 people join in just like that, and you don't have to make any promotions to that. So that's the easiest part. And now they're attracting the same kind of people. And
Right.
one problem I think you would also see is the churn rate. For example, now a lot of people join in, they might not like what you're talking about or what you're doing. So then you would have a lot of members those who are not like the retention is difficult. So then that's second part of the process, that's maintaining retention. But then the next struggle comes in retaining the members who actually would engage with you or your community.
So, let's say for someone who's really trying to start, where should they start? Like you could use me as an example as well. You could use any other business as an example. But where should someone who's like, okay, I know I need to build a community. I know I need to build my personal brand. Should I start on YouTube? Should I just build out a school? What do I do? What do I need to do in order to get the word out?
I think choosing one platform wherein first is identifying what I mean the first step is having that self awareness as to what you are great at and what you can offer. So, for example, in your case, you know you are great at tech and you're great at operations in terms of having the AI sequences or all the AI optimizations for the online ecosystem, specifically coaches and business owners, those who are having a digital product or online course to offer, comes like a broader set of audience for you. And that's the most difficult part to get at. Like, trust me when I say this, you would see a lot of people offering a lot of solution in the online spaces, which is great. I'm not questioning their solutions, but I'm just questioning the fact that people think it's extremely easy to figure out the ICP. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do not know yourself as a person. You do not know that the thing that you're offering is going to work. So, for example, you know that you are great at AI solutions. You don't know it's great unless someone pays you for it,
Yep.
or after paying, they give you a thumbs up. Now, if they don't do, then you know that either you need to enhance your offer or maybe work on your skills so that the transformation is there. So you need to like keep on hitting that cycle of understanding that transformation as to, because you as an individual are trying to build your personal brand. You're not associated with like a big ecosystem and it's your own personal thing. So that iteration takes a long time. I personally feel if you feel, I mean, for example, business coaches, of course, a lot of people in school are there. You need to chat and get in touch with them. That's a different story, but you would find that audience in school. So, like going on different big communities where people are active, talking to them, getting in touch with them, just seeing if you can help discovery calls. That could help. Otherwise, I think YouTube for long form, like the voice out there, definitely great. But I think starting with one platform, like focusing on that, one could be for content if you feel that it's difficult for you to find audience on school and you need to pick people up and like there's no channeling happening. Like it's very one-on-one process. And if people come in one by one to your community, it's very difficult to keep them glued together. Like you at least need 4 to 5 people ready to talk to each other. It's like a dinner party. I am
Yeah.
there, I've had half of my dinner, and then you are joining me. I'm like, if 10 minutes, I'll leave. What do I do with you? So
Mhm.
it's very similar to that. So I think having one platform you can pick in with the kind of people you know those are going to be there. For if you think that in your case, a lot of coaches do have a voice on LinkedIn and they do make a lot of YouTube videos as well because that's how people see, like, they find their audience, like, the coaches would find their customers to the kind of videos that they make or the testimonial videos that they put out there. So maybe YouTube and LinkedIn could be your space to engage with people and just tell them about, hey, you're building. If you haven't started the community, that you are trying to build this community, would you be interested in something like that if you do that? So that becomes like a clickbait. You haven't exactly spent your amount on that platform, but you are just trying to gauge would people be interested. Once you have an idea, you can float a form to them and see that, okay, now Abid as a person has reached out to like 30 people. Out of those 30, 10 have shown interest. Then you invite those 10 people and they become the founding members of that community. And
Mm.
then they start engaging and then you bring in other people. But if initially we go on to that one-on-one process, it's very difficult. That's why you would see a lot of companies doing launch first, like Apple. They always do a launch of the product and then they roll out the product because they bring in a huge mass together. So you have like the first layer of awareness, like let's say they have millions of people. For smaller products, let's say 100, 200,000 people you have. Now then the conversion is easier. You would know what's working, what's not working, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like that you brought up Apple because, as founders, especially, founders that are just starting out or maybe just have been doing it for a couple of years or maybe even be doing it for 50 years, we have this tendency to think that, oh, well, it's Apple. They can do that, right? Or it's Alex Hormozy. He can sell that. He has that audience, right? But Apple started in a garage, right? Alex Hormozy just started posting some YouTube videos. He used to sleep in his gym, right? We might not even have these big aspirations, but we can still take these big lessons from the Apples and the Alex Formozis of the world, the the big guys, right? Because they've done it, they've seen it, they know what they're talking about. And with in that same breath, we can also take these examples from smaller companies that don't do things the way that Apple and Alex Hormozy do things, right? Because maybe our goal isn't to become $1 billion company. Mine isn't. I don't care to be $1 billion company, right? But I mean, it would be cool, right? But I don't think that big. Like, my goal is like, oh, if I'm good, I'm good, right? Like, I want to be able to provide a good life for my family and my employees and everyone involved around me, my clients. But I don't care about being a $1 billion company. But anyways, I say all that to say that listening to both sides of the aisles on how to build these communities is incredibly important. And I think you're doing a really good job of kind of bridging that gap because in this day and age, I do think building that community is incredibly important. Building an online presence, building that personal brand is very important. You know,
Yeah.
I want to ask with the introduction of AI in 2022, and I mean, obviously AI has been around for a long time, but
Yeah.
really to the masses in 2022. And over the last year, we've seen AI, or the last 3 years, we've seen AI really take a foothold in our lives. Do you think it's more important now than it was before to build out these communities? Or do you think that AI is starting to replace the need for those communities?
So if we think about this in a logical way, AI is here to automate tasks for us. But I don't think as long as you and I are human, our need to connect would go away. For example, towards the end of the day, either you come from West, which is capitalistic, people talk about individualism. Towards the end of the day, you do have that sense of isolation. And sometimes that fear of being in isolation cripples you out. Like you are like, oh my God, I'm all alone. And at that point in time, if you know you have people, it just, solves everything out. If you watch this movie, Fault in Our Stars, so you would see people battling with cancer have communities.
Mhm.
Now you might be a multi-millionaire, but it just would feel great that, okay, I have someone who's suffering with not my disease, but who knows the pain of going through cancer
Yeah,
as a disease. No one else in their family can interpret the pain, the suffering that they go through. But someone who has gone through the same thing, they can at least empathize. So I think even, I mean, as long as you can have AI chatbots in our community, AI chatbots can do onboarding, can do screening, can do a lot of initial tasks. And I think I'm onto that. I've been speaking with a few of my friends, and like one friend is into music and synth, and he's like a DJ. And he's like all over AI. Like he has his entire chatbot family created. And whenever we meet, he just tells me different aspects. And he teaches me a lot of aspects about AI, like NA10 and different tools. But he still does his gigs. I don't see AI replacing the gig economy for him. Like people would want to see that guy and hooting and cheering for him. Not an even though all his music is AI built, for example. But they would still like to see him out there. Like, oh, we are going out there because it's his show and we are there to support him, not his like the music, even let's say that's AI music. I think that's gonna be there as long as we don't change being social animals. Like someday it gets to our head that you live individually, I live individually, I don't care about what you do. That if as long as that Homo sapien thing is gonna be there with us, we're still gonna build things that way.
absolutely. And um, I think that's a really good point, right? At the end of the day, like humans crave connection. We're social beings. We absolutely need that social connection. And you slightly mentioned something that I think is a really important talking point. And it's in the West, it's very capitalistic, it's very isolationist, it's very individualistic. And
Yeah.
so, a lot of times, especially as founders, maybe you sit down in your chair for 14 hours a day and you're just isolated and you're just working on everything. And then you go home and you feel lonely. You feel alone. There's this male loneliness epidemic that people talk about. There's this growing what's the word I'm looking for? There's the numbers of depression, anxiety are all going up.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot in the West. Now, you and I, we both come from South Asian cultures where community aspect is very, very big. And I think that's something that the West really needs a lot of. And I think what you're doing with connecting people across borders and building those communities globally is really impactful because there's so much that we can learn from each other. I grew up in the West, so there's so many things that I think, Pakistan and India need to implement about the West,
Yeah.
right? Right? There's so many things. And we could we could go on for an hour long talking about the things that they could improve, right? And then you on the same token, there's so many things in America that you're like, man, back home, it's not like this. Back home, I still talk to my next door neighbor in Karachi, right? All my family, they know every single one of their neighbors. I know two of my neighbors, here. So it's really interesting, and I love the fact that you are building those connections with each other.
I think what I really appreciate as you is you brought this topic out, and when we talk about cultures, when we talk about these understanding, it's just really important. So I think we've done conferences in different parts of the world. We did one in Thailand, where I was in Finland. We did a few in the United States. We're planning a few in Dubai, Italy, and things. But I think you need to be conscious of who's talking about what, and it doesn't come that way. I mean, you sometimes need to experience or know where the other person comes from. For example, I mean, we share the same, somewhere very similar culture. So, for example, you would know the importance of offering someone tea, offering
Mhm.
someone water when they get to your place, or, like immediately talking about family. That's what build relationships. Now, I
Right.
was interviewing someone from Finland. He runs the largest semiconductors company in Finland. And if you know, Finland is one of the largest energy supplier to the world, being a Nordic country. They have
I
a
didn't know
lot of
that.
energy production going on. So they supply a lot of energy to a lot of European countries. And they have building a lot of things with China and Japan. A lot of import and export keeps on happening from Nordic countries, specifically to the countries those who are manufacturing nations. Now, if you sit with these people, the first thing that Finnish CEO, and he just came randomly to sit with us. Like my friend, I had my Italian best friend. She and I are just eating food. We had this random man join us, and he's just talking about our cultures. And he's like, "Oh yeah, India has this culture," and I'm like, "Yeah." It's because we've grown up in that culture. You cannot eliminate that sense of it. I mean, no matter how global we are, it would be easier for us to identify if someone comes from the same culture as ours. So
Mhm.
he's just saying that, it's a thing in East and maybe in States also to build relationships. With us in a lot of European countries, you talk business first and you build relationships later. And if you're like talking a lot or trying to know about me and my family, and I don't know what's your intent with me, first set your intent. Let me know if it's a business thingy, because we both know we are here for a transaction and it's very clear. Once we have that transaction completed and you and I both feel that there's a chance for this to convert into something that's personal, that's the second step. That's never the first step. But if you go to Mexico, if you come to India, if you go to Pakistan, people would they would treat you to dinners, they would talk about a hundred other things, but not the business first.
Yeah, if we
And
talk
then
about
it's
business first, it's like, "No, you're being greedy."
yeah, and I didn't know a friend of mine. She and I were talking, and I saw she made me meet X person, and I didn't know the X person was offended because I was curious to ask questions that does cryptocurrency actually make you a millionaire faster than anyone else? Just because I have a friend who's in Canada and he's actually building almost there to make $1 million solo ecosystem for himself, which is astonishing. I mean, I'm proud of him. So I was like,
Absolutely.
is he just doing it for the personal brand or for the media, or is it actually true? So I can just ask this person, since the person she made me meet, it comes from the same space. And then I didn't know that the person didn't like it. And I was happy to apologize because I didn't know that the person might find it intrusive. And absolutely, if you found that intrusive, I'm happy to apologize. But in your mind, you would not think, you don't know what the other person's perceiving. And just because they are in a certain culture, they might find it not good if you talk about these questions, no matter what your intention is.
Mhm.
So I think you would know it really well.
Yeah, yeah, and that also brings up the point about how important it is to learn about other cultures and understand what is respectful and what's not respectful. Um, I think it was in Japan, I believe, it's like slurping your soup is considered a form of respect, right? But if you were to slurp your soup here, it's like, hey, have some table manners, right? So it's really important to understand, especially when you're interacting with people from different backgrounds. One of the things that I found so crazy when I met my first Scandinavian person. Funny enough, it was in Pakistan as well. We were in the Himalayan mountains. We went on this hiking trip. Beautiful, beautiful. I could talk about that trip for hours if I. But I spoke to a girl who was from Norway, and she was
Hmm,
much younger than me as well. She was, I think, 8 years younger than me.
hmm,
And we spoke about a lot of the cultural differences between a Pakistani slash, Middle Eastern, South Asian culture versus a Norwegian culture. One of the things that she brought up was if I'm hanging out at my friend's house, let's say I'm a 14-year-old girl, I'm hanging out at my friend's house and they
right.
start to go for dinner. I'm staying in the room while they eat their dinner. And to me, that seems insane, right? You're just staying in the bedroom. I'm gonna go eat dinner while you're upstairs. that seemed crazy to me. And at first I was just like, no, that seems so rude. Why would that doesn't make any sense? Why would that how can you have someone in your house and not feed them? Right? And as she explained it, it was, well, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, so you're saying that my parents can't feed me? Are you insinuating by offering me food that I can't do it myself? And it was such an insane experience for me. And once I started to really think about like, okay, well, this is a different culture than mine. I understand now that like in my culture that would be offensive to not feed someone, but in another culture it's offensive to feed someone or to offer to feed someone. And obviously maybe it's a little bit different per family. Maybe it's not
Yeah.
all the way in the Scandinavian countries like that. But it was really interesting to hear that, because that is so diametrically opposed to what I'm used to. But now I can understand it because I know the culture a little bit, and she understands it as well because she's well traveled. So I really like the topic of building these bridges amongst these cultures. I think it's so important, and a lot of people may have hesitancies with bridging different types of cultures, especially if the cultures have such different norms that seem opposed to each other.
Hmm.
But I think overall, with us doing that, with us building these bridges, it's going to create a much more unified society.
Yeah. And if you and I both look at it as a big picture view, so a lot of stereotypes that are out there for a lot of cultures or people who come from a certain space, they would be removed. I mean, initially when I would see X person, even though I might have those biases or, unconscious biases, with time, they would slowly remove. Is because I would not see, okay, if for example, if I meet someone who comes from a different background altogether. There was this TED talk about the danger of a single story. This is very old, it's 15 years old, but she talks about how people still think Africa is a country. It's a continent, you have so many countries.
Huge cut.
And she said she flew to States as an immigrant. And when her roommate asks her her favorite music, she was expecting some Namibian local folklore, and she says, Maria Carey, and all I want for Christmas is you. And she's like, and her roommate was disappointed, and she was like, we do live. It's so global out there. So, so for example, people have a certain had this. I still cannot never take that podcast live, and I'm like that. I wish I could even take the bits of it. So I was speaking with someone he's an Alaskan, lives in the States. And he said that, yeah, like people have a thing that, people in South Asia, specifically India, have a certain, like, they have a certain smell. I'm like, that excuse me? I
Yeah.
mean, and my defense mechanism automatically popped up. I'm
Yep.
like, I'm not sounding defensive, but that's offensive of you speaking that. And he's like, no, because it's true. And he said, I understand this because your land is a land of spice. Oh, it would always be a different space, specifically when you go to local markets, is because so many spices are out there. Like you have chilies, cardamom, multiple spices. So when they mix, they have a certain, you can say it develops a certain different aura out there, which is not there commonly you would find in any country. And people think that, oh, this is, and then they stereotype it, which is not the case. So I think that would reduce significantly for a lot of people, not just anyone from who's coming from a second or a third world country, but it would be easy to communicate. If you see TED, if you see, there are so many global platforms like business communities as well. The reason that ISAC, they have different chapters in different parts of the world is so that somewhere on a deeper level, people know that they have a place in each part of the world that they can call home. And that will only happen when I don't judge you. Like,
Mm.
if I initially judge you as a person, you would know that, oh, she and I would not be able to communicate because I already have biases and you are very well aware of them. So you would not try, even put efforts later on to remove that because you would be like, even if I do something, this such set of people would still believe what they have heard over the ages to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do want to bring the conversation back to founders. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as someone who has obviously founded their own company and you've been doing it for a few years now, what do you think sort of is one of the biggest mindsets that an entrepreneur should have that's going to ensure a higher level of success for them?
In terms of mindset, what I have seen with a lot of people out there and what I've acquired from a lot of mentors as well is the act of doing. I mean, we believe in affirmations, we believe in writing things, and we believe in planning a lot. But if you do not do it and if you do not iterate and experiment, so speed, I think, as a mindset, like this didn't work, let's do something else. This didn't work, let's do something else. So shifting to different pieces of your business with speed is what will bring you scale. So I think even if no matter how you think about it, I should have done it differently. If you don't act on it immediately, you're going to lose a lot of pieces. Or the more time you consume on thinking about different decisions, you would slow down the process of growing that business. And a lot of ventures you would see do fail is sometimes because they take a lot of time on decision making, or they make decisions without thinking of a big picture plan and execute so much in a short term space that they lose out on the cash cows or whatever things that they might attract.
I forgot his name. It's the author of Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
He was recently, do you remember his name?
I think it's James Clear.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So he was recently on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and he was bringing up something very similar. He brought up the two types of decisions. There's a decision that could potentially be like, putting on a hat, getting a haircut, or getting a tattoo, right? And what he said was, if you're making a decision and the negative ramifications of it
Hmm.
would be just like, for example, you put on a hat, you didn't like the hat, you take the hat off, you put on another hat, right? If it's like that, if it's just something you can change real quick, don't even think about it, just do it, right?
Hmm.
If you can just change it, it doesn't matter, just do it, right? But if it's like getting a tattoo, that's where you really need to, get in there, think about it, weigh the risks and everything. But where people really get stuck is the bad haircut. It's okay, I need to go get a haircut. Your hair will grow back. It'll come back. You're not gonna have a bad haircut for that long, but it's just long enough to be painful, right?
Hmm.
It's not as easy as just changing a hat, right? So the mindset of, just speed and doing it and, falling into one of these categories is really important. Speed is something that I think a lot of the most successful people in the world talk about. So that's a really good perspective to have on what makes a good entrepreneur. When it comes to building communities, how should you go about that with speed? How should you figure out what type of decision it is when you're building out that community? If it's a hat, haircut, or tattoo.
I think I love how you brought the atomic habits perspective as well, as because it's a combination of decision speed and the amount of stability that you see with your business or your idea. For communities, what I've seen is you can definitely, I mean, it's so much. For example, we treat it as if you would have seen swarms, like swarms in oceans of different insects, or like they usually travel in swarms. So you would see one makes a certain decision, like you have a leader of like for example, bees. They have a honeybee who's the main, like the queen bee, and the entire ecosystem of that sphere, the nest is around that particular honeybee's existence. So you can take it two ways. I mean, if it's like a bad honeybee, like people study bees a lot. So I think you can treat the communities the way how honeybees actually structure the entire ecosystem for themselves out there. It's just very similar how you want communities. You would attract the same kind of people that, I mean, what kind of place you are, if you believe in the concept of energies, I think communities are a bunch of energies vibrating together. So the higher frequency you have, the kind of people are eventually you're going to attract in your community with the kind of effort. But you need to be very specific as to what is the idea of you bringing people in for something. For example, I'm hosting a dinner. I want people for this dinner, only those who are this and this. If you come from a third category, you do not fall, like, no matter how much I would want to host you, but I cannot host you for this. So, having that area of what kind of people you would want in, that you as a community owner need to be very clear with. Because I think that's where our people pleasing attitude comes into play, when we're like, yeah, I think I can cater to this person's needs. So, come on. But when that person sits on that table, he or she would realize that this table is not meant for him. Even you go and try to help that person, you are actually deviating a little bit from what you have to offer or you can do as a person, and then you'll deviate and then you try to cater to that person. So the more you start deviating to cater to multiple people's needs, it becomes a very scattered community. And then you would see you were struggling with retention, you're struggling with people not being active, they are not responding. You need to like DM them, call them, or then do different kinds of outreach to actually get them activists, because in the first place you deviate to resonate with them instead of, hey, I have this, and if this is something that you would want, of course you give them what they need later on, but if this is something you want, then you come. And the more I think fixated we are, to put it in the right perspective, we would be having a better community, because you would see so many like NAS implemented having its own community. You have Kajabi networks, so Kajabi, Mighty Network, Schools, Circle. You've had LinkedIn communities, LinkedIn groups. Used to have Facebook groups who used to have so many people, but now nobody talks about Facebook groups. Is because of having different people with different ideas, and then your own vision or mission, or like the reason you started a community gets lost, and
Mm.
it becomes into something you didn't even know. But it's not an evolved version of your thought process or your iteration. It becomes an evolved version of what people want it to be. And then it's scattered. It's because 30% would want something else, another 30 would want something else, another 20 would be like, why did I come here in the first place? Give me my money back.
So the last thing you mentioned about it's not your evolve process, it's you're evolving for what other people want. So let's say, as a business owner, you are going to go through these periods of evolution and you are probably going to deviate from where you started, right? There's so many stories of people starting here and ending here. So let's say you build out that community and you start to evolve as a creator. What do you do with the community? Do you try to evolve that community as well? Do you make a new community? What do you do without alienating the people who came to you in the first place for the original thing you had?
So there is a community that exists. It's called CMX, and they are the largest community of people, those who are community professionals. Whether they are building something in the not-for-profit space or they are building something in different spaces, like it's a community hub for people who love to talk about community. And the person who started it, the founder, Mr. David, at some point he felt that I do not resonate with this version and I want to do something else. So all the assets, courses, and everything that he has given to the community, it's still there. He's still a part of it, but then he gave it over to someone else to take care of it. Someone who has the same drive, the same mission, the same vision. And then he asked them that, hey, can you take care of this? So I think sometimes when you realize that you've built something that's so magnanimous that even if you communicate that you've grown out of it, but people still want more of it, I think replacing someone else who's capable enough to take care of that community, and you would feel that it's in safer hands for them to be the lead and take the baton ahead. That's the best possible scenario for this. In businesses we call it exiting at the right point in time. So either you like maybe resign as a CEO, keep the shares with yourself if it's a, and still get the royalties out of it, or you exit and give it away if you feel that is something that you've evolved so much that now you cannot resonate with the kind of person who started it back then. Or second option is you communicate this to your members. That's the like number one, transparency in the community, that this is something that has happened with me and I am venturing out on different aspect, or I feel that I've given enough to the community and I want to do this. If you feel all of those 100, 200,000, 2,000 members, or maybe 10,000 or million people, that you want to venture with me on that journey, feel free to evolve with me in that landscape. But if you're still figuring out and you feel that the mission that you initially aligned yourself with was this, then this is the person who would be taking the baton. I would be here, but not as active as I used to be. But you don't immediately separate yourself because people would feel disconnected. It's because they did come in for you as well as a person. If you're not there, then they would be like, I don't connect with this person more, so I don't think I would want to be here. So you stay there, you ensure that it's a smooth handover. And the people who are ready to, walk with you on that journey, then you take them with you. But I think letting them know is very important. You cannot just immediately after building something just snap the cord just like that. You need to be very, that's the tattoo decision that you talked about.
Mm. Gotcha. Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I've had an amazing conversation so far. I'd like to ask you if there's one thing that you could leave the listeners with, what would you want to leave them with?
So the one thing would be that the reason you should always be on a lookout for communities is because you would find people who believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And you would know that someday when someone looks at you, they would look at you and then they would say that I don't know why, but you sound like home.
Wow, that's powerful. That's great. Yeah, I
Thank you.
really I really enjoyed that. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation a lot. I would love to let the listeners know, how can we connect with you? How can we get connected with your business as well?
Absolutely. I think LinkedIn is a place wherein I hang out the most and school. So we are restarting like re restarting the entire community of building Hiveshare on school, and it's all on LinkedIn. So I think you can find me at Yukta Kandhari on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect with anyone who listens to the podcast and chat with them if there's any way I could help anyone with, let's say, the community or just a chat wherein, we could discover things. I'm more than happy to do that.
Amazing, amazing. Well, like I said, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. If anyone listening right now would have any topics that you'd like us to discuss, or you have anyone that you would like to be on the podcast as well, please drop them down on the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. Yukta, thank you so much. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much, Howard. It was a pleasure being here, and I am so grateful that you had the chance to me having on this platform.
Absolutely. Awesome.